The sun hung low over Montgomery, Alabama, casting long shadows down the cracked pavement of a neighborhood caught between history and the future. Avery Carter had spent years working his way up, earning every inch of his success through grit and determination. He was a black architect, one of the best in the city, yet every project he took on came with whispers behind his back, questioning if he was the right fit for the job. This time was different. He had just won the contract to design the new courthouse, a historic first. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything, not just for him, but for the generations that followed. His name would be etched into the city's skyline, a reminder that barriers could be broken. But not everyone saw it that way. The first warning came in the form of a phone call. No words, just silence, followed by the sound of something being dragged across the floor. The second came as a letter tucked into his mailbox with no return address. "Stay in your place." He ignored them. Avery had faced worse. He had grown up in the Deep South, raised by parents who taught him that respectability wouldn't always save him, that sometimes the world would see his skin before his work, but they had also taught him not to bow. He had too much to lose, too much riding on this moment to let fear win. The third warning was impossible to ignore. His office had been ransacked. Papers scattered, blueprints torn, his name scrawled in red paint across the walls. The police came, took a report, but their expressions told him everything. "This kind of thing happens," one officer had said, his voice laced with indifference. "Might be best to lay low for a while." Avery laughed. "Lay low? I haven't done anything wrong." The officer shifted, his mouth a tight line. "Just be careful, Mr. Carter." Careful. He knew what that meant. But Avery had spent his entire life being careful, watching how he spoke, how he carried himself, making sure he never gave anyone a reason to say he didn't belong. And still, here he was. That night he stayed at his office late, determined to fix what had been destroyed. The city had hired him because he was the best, and he wasn't about to let fear dictate his future. But as the hours stretched and the streets emptied, he felt it. Something watching. A presence. It started small, a prickling at the back of his neck, the hairs on his arms rising like the air itself was warning him. He shook it off, blaming exhaustion, but then came the noise. Thump, thump. 3 deliberate knocks against the glass of his office window. He turned sharply, expecting to see someone standing outside. Nothing. The street below was empty, the night air still. A prank, that's all it was. Until it happened again. Boom, boom, boom. Louder this time. Avery stood, crossing the room in long, deliberate strides. He threw open the window. "Who's there?" Silence. And then a whisper. "You don't belong here." The voice sent ice through his veins. He slammed the window shut, his pulse racing. It wasn't just a threat, it was something else, something deeper, more ancient. The lights flickered. His reflection in the glass seemed off. The Avery in the window wasn't moving the way he was. Boop, boop, boop. The knocking came from inside the office now. He spun, breath caught in his throat. The door was locked, no one was there. But the whisper came again. "This city was never yours." Avery grabbed his things and left, stepping into the humid night air. He didn't scare easy, but something about this felt different. It wasn't just racism, wasn't just hate. It felt old, rooted in something deeper than people. He drove home with the windows down, the cool air against his face doing little to steady his nerves. His parents' house sat at the end of a quiet street, the same place he had grown up. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed something. The front door was ajar. His father was meticulous. That door was always locked. Avery stepped inside, his voice steady. "Dad?" No answer. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And then, boom, boom, boom. The knocking came from his old bedroom. Avery's body tensed. He moved slowly, the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. He reached the door and hesitated. The air was thick, heavy. He turned the knob. The room was exactly as he had left it years ago. The bed, the bookshelf, the old trophies. But something was different. The mirror. There was writing on it, words traced in a thin layer of dust. "Run." His breath caught. The temperature dropped. The air turned sharp, biting. Then, from the reflection, a figure. Tall, shadowed, watching. Avery spun. Nothing. But when he looked back at the mirror, the reflection was still there. He stumbled back, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The whisper came again, curling around him like a noose. "You should have left." The mirror shattered. Glass exploded outwards, cutting into his arms as he shielded his face. And just like that, silence. The air warmed. The room was empty. His father's voice broke through the stillness. "Avery?" Avery turned to see his father standing in the doorway, eyes clouded with concern. "What's wrong?" Avery looked back at the mirror, now nothing but shards on the floor. He let out a shaky breath. "Nothing," he lied. Because how could he explain? How could he tell his father that some things in this city didn't just want him out, they wanted him erased? And worst of all, they had been here long before the people. Avery Carter sat in the pews of the small church on the west side of Montgomery, his fingers gripping the program for his father's funeral. The past week had been a blur. Grief, condolences, arrangements. His father had passed in his sleep, the doctors saying it was natural causes, but something in Avery's gut told him otherwise. The house had been locked, the window sealed, no sign of struggle, but the look on his father's face when they found him, eyes wide open, mouth twisted as if caught in the middle of a scream, sent ice through his veins. Because Avery had seen that look before, in the mirror. He didn't tell anyone about that night, about the knocking, the writing, the shadow in the glass. Who would believe him? It was easier to nod along as people told him how proud his father had been of him, how good of a man he was, how safe he had felt in his own home. But Avery knew better. His father hadn't been safe, and neither was he. After the service, he stayed behind while the rest of the mourners drifted out into the sunlit afternoon. The church was quiet now, empty except for the distant sound of organ keys being pressed without rhythm, an old woman practicing for Sunday service. Reverend Thomas approached, his wrinkled hands folded before him. "Avery," he said gently, "you staying in town for a while?" Avery nodded. "Yeah, I need to settle things with the house, go through his things." The Reverend hesitated before speaking again. "Your father, he wasn't sick, was he?" Avery frowned. "No, why?" The old man let out a slow breath, as if debating whether to continue. "Your father came to see me a few weeks ago, said he'd been hearing things. Said someone had been knocking at his door at night. When he'd go to check, no one was there." Avery's chest tightened. "He was scared, Avery," the Reverend continued. "More scared than I've ever seen him." Avery didn't respond, because he had heard the knocking too. That night, he returned to the house. It felt different now, hollow and cold, like the life had been drained from it. He left most of the lights off as he moved through the rooms, unwilling to fully illuminate what now felt like a place haunted by something unseen. His father's bedroom was the same as it had been the night he died. Bedmade, clock ticking softly on the nightstand, the mirror still covered with a sheet. Avery hesitated before pulling the cloth away. For a moment it reflected nothing unusual, just his tired face, the dim glow of the hallway light behind him. Then the breath on his neck. The whisper, "You shouldn't have come back." Avery spun, his pulse thundering. The hallway was empty. The air was thick, humid despite the winter chill outside. His breathing felt loud, too loud, but the rest of the house was silent. And then, boom, 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 the knocking. From the front door, Avery clenched his fists and took slow, deliberate steps toward the entryway. He half expected to find nothing when he looked through the peephole, but there was something. Not a person. Not a shadow. Just darkness. As if the space beyond the door didn't exist. His throat tightened, his instincts screaming at him to turn back, but before he could move, boom, boom, boom. Louder this time, more forceful. Avery stepped back. Who's there? Silence. He waited. Waited. Then, a whisper from the other side. You know who? Avery's breath hitched. He reached for the doorknob, then stopped himself. Instead, he turned and ran. Upstairs. To his father's old room, to the mirror. Because he knew, deep down, that whatever was outside wasn't trying to get in. It was trying to keep him here. The moment he stepped in front of the glass, he saw it. Not his own reflection. His father, standing in the mirror, staring at him. His father who was dead. His father who was knocking. His father whose lips moved, whispering something soundless. Avery's chest heaved. "Dad?" The reflection's mouth stretched wider. And wider. And wider. Until it wasn't a mouth anymore. Just an opening. A void. Then, in a voice that wasn't his father's, "They took me." Avery stumbled back, his heart slamming against his ribs. Who? The mirror darkened. His father's figure twisted, stretching, splitting apart like something unraveling at the seams. Then, from behind him, boom, 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 the knocking. From inside the house, Avery turned. The bedroom door was wide open, and in the hallway, a shadow. Not a person, not his father. Something else. Something waiting. The whisper curled around him like smoke. Who next? And then, the lights went out.
Avery Carter had lived in Somerville for exactly 6 months, and already he had learned the unspoken rules. Rule number 1, stay invisible. He had moved to the quiet, predominantly white town for a job, eager to leave behind the chaos of the city, but it didn't take long to understand that he wasn't truly welcome. The smiles from neighbors were too tight, the conversations too short, the friendliness nothing more than a mask stretched over something else, something older. Rule number 2, never push back. The first time he had been stopped by the police, he had been walking home from the grocery store. The officer, Deputy Barnes, had made a show of it, asking for ID, calling in his name, standing too close while pretending not to. Isaiah had done what his father had taught him. Hands visible, voice calm, don't make it worse. The deputy had finally let him go, but the message was clear. This wasn't his town. And rule number 3, the most important one of all, do not go near Hawthorne Bridge. Isaiah had never been one to believe in ghost stories, but even he couldn't ignore the way people spoke about that bridge. How their voices lowered, how their expressions changed. "That bridge ain't safe after dark," Rosalie, the kind old black woman from the church, had warned him. "You hear me, baby? You stay clear of it." Well, she had only looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "Because that bridge remembers." He didn't understand what she meant. Not then. Isaiah had never meant to break the rule. But some rules were made to be broken. It happened on a Friday night, late, when the town was asleep. He had been driving home, exhausted after a long shift, when he saw the detour sign. The main road was closed, and the only other way home was across Hawthorne Bridge. Isaiah hesitated. Rosalie's warning echoed in his head. The bridge remembers. But it was late, he was tired, and he wasn't about to turn a 15-minute drive into an hour-long detour over some superstition. So he took the turn, and the moment his tires touched the bridge, he knew he had made a mistake. The temperature dropped instantly. The air inside the car grew thick, pressing against his chest. The streetlights along the bridge flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the road. Isaiah's hands tightened on the wheel. It was fine, just a power outage, just his mind playing tricks. And then the knocking began. Boom, boom, boom. Isaiah's breath caught. It wasn't coming from the car, not from the engine, not from the road. It was coming from underneath the bridge. Boom. Boom. Slow, deliberate, like fists against wood. Isaiah pressed the gas, heart hammering. He didn't get far, because suddenly there was someone standing in the middle of the bridge. A man, dressed in tattered clothes, soaking wet. His skin was pale, too pale. His eyes were wrong, not empty, not hollow, but filled with something Isaiah couldn't place, something that sent ice crawling up his spine. Isaiah slammed on the brakes. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. And then, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed at Isaiah. Isaiah's stomach twisted. Everything in his body screamed at him to turn around, to go back, to get off that bridge. But before he could, the man spoke. His voice was a whisper carried by the wind. Or late. Isaiah didn't wait to hear more. He threw the car in reverse, tires screeching against the pavement. But as he did, the knocking grew louder. Boom, boom, boom. And then, in the mirror, the figure was gone. But something else, something worse, was there instead. A crowd, men, women, children, all standing along the edges of the bridge, all soaking wet, all watching him. And then they opened their mouths and screamed. Isaiah didn't remember getting home. He didn't remember pulling into his driveway, slamming the door behind him, locking every bolt. But he remembered the dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream at all. Maybe it was a memory. He was standing on the bridge, but it wasn't the present. The road was made of wood, not pavement. The air was thick with smoke and something worse. And below the bridge, the river was red. A crowd had gathered, men in white robes, torches in hand. And in the center of it all, a noose. A man was begging, crying. His wrists were tied, his shirt was torn, his face was swollen. And Isaiah knew him. Not from the town, not from any history book. He knew him like he knew his own reflection. Because it was him, Isaiah woke up gasping. His sheets were soaked with sweat. His heart pounded against his ribs. The dream had felt too real. But it wasn't possible. It wasn't real. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone. He needed answers. And he knew exactly who to call. Rosalie picked up on the first ring. You crossed that bridge, didn't you? Her voice was heavy. Not with anger. Not with fear. With knowing. Isaiah swallowed hard. Rosalie, who was lynched on that bridge. Silence. Then finally, remember, never wrote his name down. They never gave him a grave. But baby, Her voice cracked. You already know who he was. Isaiah sat in the dark, the weight of history crushing his chest. His town, his home, his body, it had all belonged to someone else before him. Someone who had stood exactly where he had. Someone who had begged. Someone who had died screaming. And now, the bridge wanted him back. Boom, boom, boom. The knocking started again. This time, it was coming from his front door. Isaiah Carter had spent the last 2 nights without sleep. The knocking had not stopped. At first it had been outside, on his front door, his windows, even the walls of his house, always at 3:12 a.m., always in that same slow, deliberate pattern. Boom, boom, boom. He had stopped answering his phone, stopped looking out the window, because the last time he had seen them. Standing in his front yard, soaking wet, watching him. It was the same figures from the bridge, the men, women, and children whose eyes never blinked, whose mouths never moved except to scream. But they didn't scream now, they just stood there, waiting. Rosalie had told him not to go back. If you cross that bridge again, boy, you might not make it home next time. Isaiah had listened. He had stayed home, stayed inside. He had tried to pretend the bridge didn't exist. But the problem was, the bridge hadn't forgotten him. On the 3rd night, the knocking changed. It came from inside the house. Boom, boom, boom. Isaiah sat frozen on his couch, his body locked in place. His chest tightened, his breath came in short gasps. The knocking was coming from his bedroom closet. Boom, boom, boom. His heart slammed against his ribs. He had locked that door. He knew he had. But now it was open, and a voice low, rasping, inhuman, whispered from the dark. You should have come sooner. Isaiah ran. He didn't stop to grab his keys, his wallet, his phone. He just ran. The cold air outside hit his face, but he barely felt it. His feet pounded against the pavement as he sprinted to the only place he could think of. Rosalie's house. Her porch light was on. The old screen door creaked as he banged against it. Rosalie, open the door. For a moment he thought she wouldn't. Then, finally, it swung open. Rosalie stood there in her nightgown, a candle in one hand. Her face was grave. Oh, get in. Isaiah sat at her kitchen table, his hands shaking. She placed a warm cup of tea in front of him, but he didn't touch it. She sat across from him, folding her hands. Tell me what you saw. Isaiah swallowed hard, his throat was dry. You're following me. Rosalie didn't blink. I told you that bridge remembers. Isaiah's voice cracked. Why me? A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Rosalie let out a slow breath. Because, baby, you were the one that came back. Isaiah frowned. What are you talking about? Rosalie's eyes softened. You already know, don't you? Isaiah didn't answer. Because he did know. Deep down, he had always known. The face of the man in his dream, the body hanging from the noose, the way he had recognized himself in someone who had died decades ago. Rosalie reached across the table, placing her hand over his. You ain't just living in this town, baby, you're reliving it. Isaiah's stomach dropped. They dug up the records the next day. Rosalie took him to the Somerville Public Library, where the town's history was kept in dust-covered archives no one bothered to read. They flipped through the pages. 1913. Lynching at Hawthorne Bridge. Unidentified black man found hanged at dawn. Isaiah's hands trembled as he traced the faded ink. No name, no family. Is it just a forgotten body? But then he turned the page, and there it was, a grainy black and white photo of the victim. Isaiah stopped breathing. It was his face, That night, the knocking didn't come at 3:12 a.m. It came sooner. Isaiah knew what he had to do. He left his house, left Rosalie's warnings behind, and he drove straight to Hawthorne Bridge. The fog was thick when he arrived. The bridge loomed before him, swallowing the night. But this time he wasn't afraid. He stepped out of the car, his shoes hitting the pavement, and as he walked forward, they appeared. The crowd, the ones who had been waiting. Men, women, children. All black, all the forgotten. They weren't screaming now. They were watching. And then, a new figure stepped forward. Isaiah stared at himself, at the man he had once been, who came back. The past version of him whispered. Isaiah's throat burned. I had to. His past self nodded, and slowly reached out a hand. Isaiah hesitated. Then he took it, and suddenly he remembered everything. Pain, fear, the rough bite of rope around his neck, the laughter of the men who had done it, the torches, the screams, the struggle, the silence, and then the darkness. Isaiah gasped, stumbling back to the present. The ghosts were still there, waiting, watching, and finally Isaiah understood. This wasn't about vengeance. This wasn't about punishment. This was about justice, about being remembered. Isaiah turned to face the bridge. And tell me their names? The spirits stared at him. For the first time, they smiled. Isaiah spent the next year fighting. He dug up the records, found their names. He spoke out. He told the world what had happened at Hawthorne Bridge. And the world listened. The bridge is gone now. The town tore it down. And in its place, a memorial stands. For the forgotten, for those who never got a grave, for those who died without names. And every year, Isaiah returns, not out of fear, but to honor them. The knocking is gone, but the memory remains. And so does Isaiah.